young men. That's something that doesn't change in wartime. The average age is about 19.
And the heroism was so considerable when, even more than that, you consider the sort of missions they were being thrown into, flying and operating not just the B-17s, but also the consolidated B-24 Liberators. The main tactic of the 8th Air Force, daylight raids against German industrial facilities and transport and resupply networks. And in the early part of their commitment to the European theatre, let's not forget, they didn't really have a suitable escort fighter. They were using Spitfires, which were very short-ranged as escorts, and so the losses on those missions were horrendous.
They were, and we saw earlier the Mustang, and we talked about the impact that made, and the impact that it made was in fact in support of the bombing campaign of the Americans over the central part of Europe.
Indeed, because when both the B-47 Thunderbolts, which you can see one under the American Air Museum, and the Mustang came along, they really did change that situation. But nonetheless, even with that extra fighter protection, the conditions on board the B-17s at altitude were appalling. Of course, it was a noisy and cold environment. Mutual fire support against fighter attacks, or later, when Luftwaffe fighters became less of a danger in the European theatre, by minimising or trying to minimise the aircraft's exposure to flak. And this was always wing was deemed to be good against fighters. They then restricted that down to a sort of 36 aircraft combat box, which became standard by early 1944. And the B-17 was a good aeroplane to fly close formation in, better than the B-24.
The number of guns that the B-17 carried increased, of course, as the progress of the war continued. And we were mentioning flak there, and one thinks about flak as being very difficult to hit a B-17, but towards the latter stages of the war they were using radar-guided flak, and flak actually accounted for more fallen B-17s.
To be deployed operationally, had 5 .5-inch machine guns with just one in the nose. This is a B-17G model, very much the ultimate. 13 machine guns armed this aeroplane. And don't forget, it was felt to have been a very heavily defensively armed bomber even when it first appeared in 1935, hence being given the name Flying Fortress.
Yes.
But that was nothing compared with this aircraft. 2 machine guns in the chin turret, a bomb load between 4,500 and 8,000 pounds, depending on the mission, less than the B-24, which was longer range. You can see quite a small bomb bay on the B-17, but nonetheless, this aircraft made the most tremendous contribution alongside the B-24 to the efforts of the 8th Air Force, those daylight raids,